instead do it God's way. There's a second concept I'd like to suggest also in the Bible. There are a number of different kinds of water that the Bible refers to. This kind of water, like you see here running down the waterfall, down the face of the cliff from the spring, that kind of water is called living water. And it's living water not so much that it gives life, but it's living in the sense that it's fresh. It's clean. It's always pure. It doesn't get stagnant or stale. It's just life-giving. And in that sense, it's called living water, whereas the water in those cisterns we've been seeing on Masada, at Lachish, at Azekah, that kind of water could really be referred to as cistern water or dead water. And that, of course, can get stagnant. It can have things floating in it, and it's just not always fresh. Now, there are two ways that that became significant in its implication for Jewish people. The first was they developed a tradition that you need to wash yourself. You need to be pure when you go to see God. We'll look at mikvahs when we go to Qumran and when we're in Jerusalem. And they said for a mikvah to be appropriate for cleansing, it has to have living water in it. That is water that's been untouched by humans. It has to be water that flows in there naturally, either from the rain or from a source of water, something like this. So in a sense, living water communicates also the idea of purity. In the Gospel of John, Jesus meets a woman at a well. And in that passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 4, Jesus asks the woman for a drink. The woman was surprised because she was a Samaritan, kind of unclean. Jesus answered, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The idea is the water I have to offer is pure. It's clean. It brings purity, and it's always fresh. It's always new. I like the idea, too, that that water then becomes a spring inside of you so that you actually become a source of the same kind of life to other people. The last idea that I think of when I think of this kind of water is again that contrast between living water, so fresh and so pure, and cistern water. Imagine that cistern water with dust and dirt in it and maybe even animals floating on the surface of it that died getting in it. And this is what Jeremiah says. He says, "My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water." Now imagine, you're David. You came up this canyon, you've been out in the desert for months, you're hot, your water has been water that's been drawn out of cisterns and pools in the wadi, and it's been warm and it's been dirty. You come walking up here in the sunlight, you hear the water, you get to the water, put your face in it and you drink, and then for some reason you just walk away from it. You almost laugh. Who would forsake the spring of water? But that's not the worst. Jeremiah continues, "They've forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water." Now a cistern then would represent what you create with your own hands versus God's water out of the rock. And Jeremiah says, "My people have worshipped idols. They've left me, and this is what I'm like in a dry and very tired countryside, dry and weary land. But they've gone and they've dug these cisterns that won't even hold water, and they're trying to satisfy their thirst with an idol." It seems to me that what this place says is that life in a lot of ways is like the wilderness. We're called to be there. We've got a job to do. We've got people we need to interact with. We have a culture that we need to impact. But that can be a dry and tiring thing. And I'm sure many of you have felt the tiredness of trying to serve the Lord and giving of yourself to other people until it hurts. And it's times like that, it seems to me, that this place says, you got to have a place like this in your life. You need somewhere where you can come away from the heat, away from the giving, away from the dryness of just being empty after a while, being a parent, being a student, being a business person, being a teacher, being a lawyer, and being able to come here and in the quiet, taste God. If we're going to leave this experience that we've had in this country and really impact the culture, really make a difference, we're all going to have to devote ourselves to spend some time at Engedi on a regular basis. Whether that's daily prayer time, whether that's time spent alone with the Lord or in reading of His Word, but just that time where in the middle of feeling dry, in the middle of feeling weary, instead of sitting under the broom tree, to come here. And I think without that, it'd be very difficult to go on. Added to that, it seems to me the image is when I come here and I drink and I drink and I drink and I'm full and I'm refreshed and I lay in the water and I'm cool and I feel alive again, God now becomes the same within me for you and for each of you for each other. So I think we need to encourage ourselves today that the place we're going to get this strength, I know several of you have commented on what a big job God gives to people. What an enormous responsibility being a Christian in culture really is. But the source comes from the living water.